Hi there, good morning, welcome to Indycar. My name's Gordon Ross and this morning I'm talking to you from Maryhill. And actually this morning I've got a couple of little pieces of news for you. The first one is about Nicola Sturgeon, and yesterday she was interviewed by the BBC's Gordon Brewer. And in the interview Gordon was trying to entice the First Minister into declaring an Indy ref or declaring it was off. And Ms Sturgeon actually said quite simply that it would be pretty stupid of her to having said that the independence referendum should remain an option, for her to suddenly write it off at this moment, or to tell Gordon Brewer exactly when it was going to be. But the implications of this, or the inference that I could draw from this series of comments, is that independence is very much on the table, and it has to be, because we now have about a year and a bit before Brexit actually becomes a reality. And the point where it becomes a reality, all bets are off as far as independence is concerned because of the repeal bill. So I think it's safe to say that Ms Sturgeon, although she's not said anything about when this referendum is going to be, it has to be in line with what Alex Salmond has already said, which is it really must be before the 29th of March 2019, which is the Brexit date, and it's most likely to happen sometime between September this year and March the following year, for very obvious reasons. That's the actual deadline. So I don't think there's any danger of independence being kicked into the long grass or kicked down the street another year. I think it's definitely going to be on the cards, and all the signals from the First Minister are that it's always going to be an option throughout the rest of this year. So he's not going to call the referendum until all of the things that need to be done have been done, and that all the pieces of planning and all of the practical arrangements for an independent country are in place already. And that is a very tall order. It takes a long time to plan and execute all those sorts of arrangements. So that's the first piece of news. So I think it's a good piece of news. It's positive, and I expect that there will be a referendum before the March of 2019. When it's going to be, I'm not sure, but I expect it also. I agree with Alex Salmond. I think it's going to be in the autumn, towards Christmas time, between the autumn and Christmas this year. Second piece of news today, it's not really news actually, this is another pretty blatant attempt this morning by Reporting Scotland on its tiny piece of news that's inserted into the breakfast time show, to try to rubbish the Scottish NHS a bit more. But they're really reaching now, they're absolutely straining to try and find anything wrong with it, and they managed to criticise the fact that on one of the busiest nights of the year in accident and emergency, some people had to wait longer than 4 hours. Now that's a big deal. I mean, it happens all the time in every accident and emergency unit across the United Kingdom. And the worst thing that they could manage to find was a chap who had hurt his ankle and was sent away saying that it's probably not broken, but if you still have trouble with it, come back and we'll x-ray it. So he went home, walked about on it for a bit, and it got sorer, and he came back later on in the week, got it x-rayed, and it was broken, and he got a cast on it. Not exactly life-threatening stuff, I'm sure you'll agree, and it happens every day in accident and emergency units up and down the country, probably several times a day, and nobody thinks that this is any kind of news, and nobody in their right mind thinks that it is in some way indicative of the decline of the Scottish National Health Service. And one final piece of news this morning for you, which I thought was interesting and has kind of slipped through the net in terms of British media, and that is the supposed special relationship between the United Kingdom and America took another bit of a blow today when it emerged that the British Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, has disagreed with Trump. Trump, as you might remember, decided that he was going to move the American embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and to recognise Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Now, this was an incendiary remark, to say the least. This is a move which is designed to inflame the situation in Palestine and in Israel and to cause violence and disruption. And it's done that. the Israelis and obviously Hamas are at each other's throats again over this, which is seen as a gross insult to many religions that America could push Israel into the situation where it's decided, arbitrarily, America has decided that Jerusalem must be the centre, the actual capital of the Israeli state. Now, the reason that this piece of news has come up is that Boris Johnson disagreed. He actually refused to agree with Trump, and the British position on this is not an agreement with the Americans over the recognition of Jerusalem. And this is unusual for the British state not to comply with American foreign policy. And it's the first time I've ever seen the British Foreign Secretary not comply and not go along with an American action in the Middle East. So it's possibly a sign that things are changing. We know that after the aircraft wing incident, I'll call it, where wings being built for Bombardier aircraft, which were heading to America, which would normally be built in Northern Ireland, that Trump decided, for reasons best known to himself, that he was going to block the importation of aircraft from this Canadian firm which manufactures in Northern Ireland by putting a 400% tax markup on every aircraft they tried to sell in America, which basically has caused that company to lose jobs in Northern Ireland and to wreck any kind of relationship with the British industrial sector. So I think the special relationship between the United Kingdom and America has actually dissolved to a large extent, and the fact that the Foreign Secretary has disagreed with Trump over this business of Israel's capital is an unusual development, and I think it's something that we should watch in the future, because if we're suffering from a souring of relationships between what will become the Brexitania state, the British state outside Europe, if it's losing its friendship with America, how are we going to trade across the Atlantic if Trump is putting up trade barriers? And what will the British Foreign Secretary do about that? Because it seems to me that he doesn't have a great deal of options in terms of dealing with America, and at the moment this is the first sign of any kind of backbone from the British Foreign Secretary. And it's interesting that it's happened now and it's not getting any media attention. But I'm telling you about it because I think it's important. It's a little marker being put down by Boris Johnson that he doesn't always agree with the Americans. And in this particular issue, which is going to stir up a hornet's nest of violence in the Middle East, Britain is standing back from it for some reason. So it's interesting times, and with what's not going on in the British cabinet at the moment, the reshuffle seems to have been a colossal damp squib. And interestingly, the Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, has refused to take up his new position, which could be because he's in the middle of a National Health Service crisis and he needs to deal with it. But also the fact that his replacement, the lady who's planned to replace Hunt in the health portfolio, her husband works for, it seems to me, works for a private health company, and so there's a clear conflict of interest there. If the woman who's going to be running the health service, her husband actually works for a private healthcare company, how on earth can she possibly be impartial? Anyway, those are the news items for today. Indycar will be back again on your screens tomorrow, and hopefully have some more news for you then. Those of you watching on YouTube for the first time, welcome to the Indycar show. Hope you've enjoyed what I've said this morning, and if you have any comments, please feel free to message me or text me after the show. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, but bye for now.